all of you have been practicing licensed insolvency trustees for a number of years. Do you think there is a stigma around debt? Donna, do you want to field that one?
Yeah, good question. I think my initial reaction to that is I think sometimes we're our own harshest critics. And so I would say, yes, I think, people feel the stigma, but I think it's, can be us feeling it to ourselves, if you will. Um, for most personal consumer insolvencies, it's a private matter. It's a matter between the person and the trustee's office. So, there's no generally publication or anything like that of it. So I think it's mostly how we make ourselves feel about this, which is normal. And so I think that's probably where the stigma comes from.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So, John, did you have anything you wanted to add to that or some thoughts on that?
No, I agree with Donna. We're kind of our own worst enemies a lot of times. With respect to debt and obtaining debt and the stigma behind it, I almost think like it's part of life now. So people take on debt, like taking it on and having debt isn't really a stigma. It's once they kind of realize that they're in too deep and they can't really manage it, where that's when they kind of start to beat themselves up and really, start to kind of bury their head in the sand type of thing. So yeah, most definitely, like Donna said, we do tend to people tend to beat themselves up over. At least people I see, they come in and they're kind of ashamed that they had to come in.
Mhm.
But it's easy to obtain debt nowadays, so it's a cashless society. Like we're encouraged to use debt in everything we do. So it's kind of it's not their fault at the end of the day. Not entirely their fault, but it's not like it's easy for people out there.
Right. No, those are some great points. I think that's true. I think that certainly, and then we'll maybe touch on this a little bit later on in terms of sort of the generational aspect that goes on here, because certainly, in today's society, it's not unusual to have debt. It's not unusual to, for example, be primarily interested in what the monthly payment's going to be rather than when am I going to actually be able to pay this off, and the affordability of that side of it. So I mean, certainly people are carrying debt, as we've seen in terms of some relatively recent statistics. I mean, our debt to income ratio is I think about the highest it's ever been. So all of that is some factors there, right? So, um, Tara, did you have anything else you wanted to add to those comments?
No, I would say my comments were very similar to what John was saying. It's very normalized now to have a fair amount of income, or excuse me, debt. But I don't think um, people can manage having the debt. But once they get into trouble, they don't want to talk about that. They do feel there's a lot of stigma around that.
Right. Yeah, fair enough. And that's something that Donna touched on earlier in her first comments was the idea that, it is sort of there's a lot of sheepishness around that, and people just don't talk about it very much. That's almost like having a medical condition or something like that. It's not something that anybody wants to have to talk about, and so that's I think that's probably true for a lot of people.